So let's talk about the deaf community in Omaha. That is right, Omaha, Nebraska has a deaf community. In case you're new here, hi. I finally got the chance to move out in an abusive household that lasted 31 years, basically all my life. And I moved 1,000 miles away to Omaha, Nebraska. I touched on the deaf community very briefly in a previous video where I talked about all about moving to Omaha, so if you haven't checked that out, you can do so. But I think that it deserves its own video. Part of having a new audience pop up every once in a while is you make multiple videos of the same thing, because you never know who's gonna see what. So before I actually made the move to Omaha, I visited 3 times last year, and the first time that I made my visit, I didn't realize just how much of a deaf community was actually here. Honestly, I really didn't know that much about Omaha to begin with. I really wanted to visit because of some friends. I wanted to meet them, and then that's when I realized, hey, there's a pretty large deaf community here. Off topic, but one of the cons of having a 370 square foot studio apartment, anything your cats do, you have to hear it. Unless you're deaf like me, without hearing aids though, then you don't have anything to worry about. But yeah, so I was actually visiting a hearing friend at the time, but I also knew that I had some deaf friends that lived here. 2 specifically, my friend Rensa, who you might know from TikTok and Instagram, and another friend who actually lives 45 minutes away in Lincoln. And when I said that I was gonna come visit Omaha, I had an invitation to this event for like Midwest deaf women, or it was hosted by the Midwest Deaf Women Group, and it was ASL night. It was at a coffee shop, and it was basically like this spring story time type of deal. So everybody was coming, not just deaf women. And so I went to that. I did not give a story like I originally planned to. I chickened out at the last minute, but yeah, so it was then that I realized just how much of a deaf community there really was. I mean, just 15 minutes away in Iowa, literally you just cross the river, go a little bit downtown, cross the river and the state border, and drive a little bit farther, and Iowa School for the Deaf is right there. Omaha used to have a deaf school not very far from here. Omaha is a very small grid city. Nothing's really that far. But Omaha used to have a deaf school, and that closed down, I want to say, in 1998. And Lincoln, 45 minutes away, has the Nebraska Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So you got a lot of deaf people that live over in Lincoln as well. Quite frankly, you have a decently sized disabled community in general. And from the first time that I visited back in last April, March and April, I ended up making a few friends that I still ended up talking to, that I ended up seeing again when I visited the 2 more times last year. And lo and behold, here we are. It was the first visit actually that made me want to move here for various reasons, but the deaf community here was definitely a large part of that. Even better, the thing about the deaf community here is that there's a lot of people, there's way more people around my age. Whereas, say, in North Carolina, yeah, you had North Carolina School for the Deaf in Morganton, and you had some communities sprinkled in Charlotte, in Morganton, in Greensboro, and also in Eastern North Carolina, because there's another deaf school on that side of the state. Most of the people that I really knew there were either really young, they were literally the K-12 students in North Carolina School for the Deaf, which would just be weird. And the other half were like people that were just too much older than I was. So while yes, we would say hi, hello, catch up, you know, we might hang out if we were, you know, at the same event and things like that and be cordial with each other, there was no real way to form any like real friendship connection for me personally, because the age gap being so strong. I'm not saying you can't make friends with like older people. I have made like friendship connections with people that are like 20 years older than me, But I was looking for something more than that. I wanted to have people my own age, a couple years younger, a couple years older. Perfect. But I just didn't want them to be as old as my parents or my grandparents, or as young as elementary and high school students, because that's weird. Also, I found very quickly that a lot of, well, I don't know how, take a lot loosely, way more people than I imagined know ASL, or at least some ASL, just walking around and about, because there is an interpreting program at University of Nebraska Omaha, and a new friend that I made that I've hung out with so much since I've moved here in comparison to other people is actually a student at that program. And over the weekend, a couple days ago, I actually met a new friend because they are also part of that program. And yesterday I randomly walked into a coffee shop that I didn't expect to walk into, but I just decided, okay, I'm gonna walk in there. And I had my phone out because I was prepared to just start typing because I didn't have my hearing aids in. And the person working there actually knew who I was and knew some ASL, so there's that. There are so many more deaf events around here. I mean, like I said, there's a larger community. You have the Iowa School for the Deaf. The commission is in Lincoln. So there's just so much more opportunity for people to get together. We just had a parade for one of the boxers that grew up here, and the stage had an interpreter. And also at that same park downtown, every once in a while, at least during the summer, they have movie nights. And when I asked them, they said that they do come with open captions. I haven't been to one yet, and I cannot remember when the next one is, because they haven't updated that on Instagram or anything, but that's also a really good thing. And a couple of days ago, you know, when I talked about meeting somebody new, I went to a drag show, and it was the very first all-inclusive would also have captions involved in there, but it was a more deaf-friendly event because you had performers that knew ASL. Not all of them did, but some of them did, or at least a little bit. But you also had a deaf performer performing the songs in ASL if the drag queen or king did not know ASL. So having that and seeing that first ever more inclusive, more deaf friendly drag show, that was pretty damn cool because I've never seen anything like that back in North Carolina. And also, while I'm trying to shop around for a therapist, I have found, I actually had a friend of mine that works in the mental health field here who is deaf. He sent me a whole PDF file of a bunch of therapists that are either fluent in ASL, or they know some ASL, or they're more than willing to hire an interpreter, to book an interpreter without a fuss. Now, in terms of like audiology and stuff, I haven't found an audiologist yet. I probably should soon, just knowing my track record with my hearing aids. But the one office that I've seen, I don't know how many audiologist offices we have here. I've seen at least 2, but one of them I think is closed down in the middle of renovating. I'm not really sure. But the main one on Dodge, I follow their account on Instagram, and the language that they use tends to be not the greatest in the world, so I'm not entirely sure about that. I do need to ask around, ask my friends and find out like more audiologists, or if any of them there that are really good. I've said this before, you'll find a lot of people saying this. Audiology, I mean the medical industry in general, it tends to be very ableist, and audiology is no stranger to that. In terms of like open caption shows in cinemas, I can't really say whether or not, I don't want to say it's much better than anywhere else, regardless of having a very prominent deaf community here. Of course, the main cinema company is AMC. You know, they have announced that they're gonna have all these open caption shows, and I have found that there's at least one open caption show a week when I want to go somewhere, I want to watch a movie. There's a theater in Lincoln that announced 2 open caption showings today. Actually, I can't remember what movies they are for. and they're actually not AMC theaters, they're Marcus theaters. And when I requested having open captions for a movie that I wanted to go see with a local walking group, they actually went and turned it into an open caption show when the leader of the group, if you will, the host of the group, asked the theater if they could make that happen. So it wasn't originally an open caption show. I could have gotten the closed caption device, I'm pretty sure, but they were like, you know what, okay, cool, we will put on open captions, no problem. I've never experienced anybody else actually being able to do that. Mostly when I found out that other friends have asked other places to do that, they're just like, okay, well, we can't do that, you're just gonna have to pick this time that we already have available. I'm not saying that Omaha is always gonna do that, but they did it for that time, so that was pretty damn cool because that's never happened to me before. People are so much more willing to text you or email you without a fuss. So I've had to go to the vet a lot recently because Simon got diagnosed with kidney disease stage 2. So he's having to go to the vet more often, and I'm getting text messages from my vet instead of them only calling me. They have called me from time to time, but I will get a text message or I will get an email. If I have a question, they're gonna email me or they're gonna text me. So that's pretty cool. Most other places that I've had to deal with back in North Carolina and such tend to be a little bit fussy or forgetful, and then they'll just call me and then I'm like, well, that's annoying. Of course, I have gotten hung up on by some other businesses, mostly when there's a language barrier involved, but also just other times when they're like, we don't want whatever you're selling. But yeah, when over the weekend when I went to that drag show and I saw old friends that I made last year that recognized me and they're like, oh hey, it's nice to see you again. I'm like, yeah, I literally have officially moved here. So that's been nice, and we could see each other again, and seeing new people, some people I met just a few weeks ago at other events. And it's cool to see people my age, or at least around my age, and we can hang out. There's other events to go to, and that's going to help a lot with growing into my deaf identity, learning more ASL, and actually becoming a little more conversational in it and being better at it. And now I don't have to do this thing where it's like I'm here for a little bit and then I get used to signing and then I end up having to go back home and then I don't use it again for months and months and months on end, except for the very rare very short periods of time where I'm signing in a TikTok video, Instagram, things like that. Now here I have a much bigger chance of using it more often, more consistently, learning more, because obviously I still have a ways to go. People have commented in the past in videos being like, you started learning in 2015 and this is where you're at now. And that happens when you're not in an area where there's a prominent deaf community and you don't get to use it a lot. Now compared to the deaf community in DC and Austin, Texas especially, and even Los Angeles, it may not be as large as those cities, but the deaf community here is definitely much bigger than I ever thought. I was pleasantly surprised. In my humble opinion, Midwest deafies are the best deafies thus far. It's here it is so much more casual, a lot less a clique, if you will. This is just me and my personal experience. I mean, everybody's been pretty nice everywhere I go, no matter what, but something about the Midwest is just a completely different experience compared to everywhere else. Say bye-bye. So yeah, there's some background information on the deaf community in Omaha. If you do have any more questions about the people here and things that happen, leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer those either in the comments directly or make another video, because Lord knows I need to make some more videos. I've got bills to pay and rent to pay now, and a car payment. But speaking of all that, if you would like to support the work that I do and get extra and exclusive content, I do have a Patreon page, so you will get access to behind the scenes in videos, writing, and things like that for as low as $1 a month. So the more that you pledge, the more that you get. And that's the first paycheck that I get every month, and so far it just covers my car. That's always very helpful. If you don't want to make a monthly commitment, there is a super thanks down here somewhere. It's like YouTube's tip jar, and that's always very much appreciated as well. YouTube channel memberships as well, somewhere down here. I need to get rolling back on that at least once a month. I know. But that is also extremely helpful because that helps with the YouTube paycheck as well. If you have not yet subscribed, consider doing so and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I very much appreciate it, and I will see you later.